I'm going to.
Well, welcome to everybody. We're going to get started here. What if we begin with a word of prayer, and then we'll dive right in. All right, let's pray, shall we? Father in heaven, we give thanks to you that you have given us a new day and a new week. We celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And in that resurrection power, may we live our lives, and may we also reach out to others, giving them the hope of the resurrection from the dead, not only at the end of their life or at the end of time, but already now, to live by the power of your Spirit. May you give us wisdom in knowing how we might wisely and graciously connect with others in a way that is natural, in a way that is loving, in a way that understands the gospel. O Lord our God, hear our prayer. For Jesus' sake, amen. All right, does anybody need a booklet to follow along? Anybody who didn't get one or forgot theirs today? All right. We are on page 27. Did you need one too? No. Oh, I thought I saw your hand up.
Sorry, I was using my head. Sorry.
You need one. If you're on page 27, it simply says in this session we will be thinking more about the people you know and how you can be connecting with them, how you can get to know them, serve them, and help them find out more about Jesus. Let me just show you this real short video just to kind of bring us up to speed and move us onward.
So far, we've considered the motive for God's saving plan, and we've seen that his love is the reason he sent Jesus. And love is the same motive in our concern for people to know Jesus. Then we saw the message of the gospel and how rebellious people can be rescued and raised to new life when they respond to Jesus Christ. Thirdly, we looked at prayer, since God alone is able to give people new life and make them his own. Now we're considering the people that we connect with, not just special relationships, but the many contacts we have that could be opportunities to tell of Jesus. This is not to say that we must blurt out information to casual acquaintances, nor that we see people as just scalps to be gospeled. But the surprising fact that so many of our contacts can turn into real conversations. And so many people have been helped to rethink Jesus Christ without waiting for a 10-year friendship to gain the permission. Many people find that their circle of contacts has been a source of good opportunities for talking about Jesus. Here's the surprising thing. We usually go in our mind to the same group of contacts for a special event. As a minister, for example, I see fine Christians bring their special friend back to the outreach dinner or meeting. But actually, we have a wider circle as well. Think of the shop people that you're beginning to talk to. Think of the people you see quite regularly at the local school or sports field or gym or bus stop. The exercise in your workbooks called Who Do You Know is designed to get you thinking about these people, and your list may surprise you. A careful word or comment or invitation may open a whole new door for them and key information about Jesus.
All right. This is quite a practical session here. If you turn to page 28 and 29, the diagram on page 29 says you may not realize how many people you come into contact with in an average week, This exercise will help you compile a list of people you know by name and see fairly regularly. Write the names of people you know who don't know Jesus in the space provided on page 29. All right? It's just going to be a 5-minute exercise. Write down as many names, and maybe it's the neighbor across the street. You don't know their name, so write neighbor in the blue house or whatever the case may be. All right? So on the you notice the circle, it starts with me, then the next circle is your family, your neighborhood, your work, social contacts. And so on page 29, you see those 5 bullet points. Write in the names of folks that you know or aren't sure you know Jesus. Okay? We're especially thinking of those who are unbelievers, but those who you come into contact regularly. Maybe it's your hair setter or your barber. Maybe it's the lady at the grocery store or the person that you meet at the hardware store. Maybe it's the person, I don't know what place of business that you go to, but write down the names because we're going to do something with these names in just a little bit. So I need specific names. Anybody need an ink pen?
Yeah, I do. And then what I'll do is I'll bring our book from home.
Okay.
And get it back.
All right. Anybody else need an ink pen?
Good catch.
It may not be somebody you see every week, but maybe it's somebody once a year, like your dentist, or
Neighborhood, or 2 neighbors. Yeah, they go up there. We work over there. So we can promise their others.
maybe there are service people that come to your door. Maybe it's the person at the gas station. Probably pay at the pump, but maybe it's a good reason not to pay at the pump, so you can go meet the person behind the counter. All right, I'll give you about 2 minutes yet, so think hard. Maybe it's a restaurant that you go to, and it's either the owner or maybe the person who waits on your table. All right, let's turn the page. Actually, at the very bottom of page 29, it has us do a little Bible study here. Bottom of page 29, where it says Bible study, it says, you've thought about the people you meet in an average week. What does the Bible have to say about the way you should relate to those people? What should be your attitude to others? And how should that affect your actions? I think this is helpful for us because oftentimes when we think about missions and doing evangelism, we oftentimes think about going through our neighborhood or through the town and just knock on all the doors and try for an opportunity to present the gospel. This approach, I think, is much more natural. It thinks about people that we already have contacts with. They already have some familiarity with us, and we're simply thinking of ways in which we can wisely love them and serve them. Here's a passage from Galatians 5 on page 29. It says, "For you are called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." So it says, do not use your freedom. What freedom do you think Paul is talking about here in the context of Galatians? What freedom do you think he's talking about?
Would it be the freedom that because we are saved, our sins are forgiven, present, past, future, we are saved, and that's a great freedom. But that doesn't mean, like he's spoken in other passages, I think in Romans, where he says, and well, does that mean then where grace it abounds, sin can abound even more?
That's right.
Then he goes, God forbid.
That's right. So our freedom here is freedom from the guilt of sin, but it's also free from the dominion of the devil. And being free from the dominion of the devil means that that freedom isn't that we can now live however we want. In other words, live for an opportunity for the flesh, living according to our desires, but we are free from the dominion of Satan in order to be free to do the will of God. And that, of course, is to love your neighbor as yourself. At the bottom of page 29, it asks us to read from 1 Corinthians 9, verses 19 through 23. 1 Corinthians 9, 19 through 23. So if you've got a Bible, turn there with me. 1 Corinthians 9, 19 through 23, where Paul, writing to the Corinthians, talks about this freedom, and he talks about it personally. It says it this way in verse 19. "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them." What do you think Paul means here when he says that I am free from all? This is a little different from I am free from sin and I am free from the devil. What do you think he means when he says I am free from all?
I have the NASB, and then it says, "I am free from all men."
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I still don't know.
So I am free from all men, or I am free from all people? In what sense?
That he's not obligated to do what they want.
That's right. I'm not obligated to live up to other people's expectations. And yet, isn't this what we oftentimes struggle with? We are, I don't know about you, but I know I oftentimes am a people pleaser. I want to do what people expect me to do so that they'll accept me. He says, I'm free from that. I don't have to live up to people's expectations of me. Why? Because I live before God, and therefore I am free from living up to the expectations of others. And as long as I seek to please God, that is my freedom. And so I'm free from all men. However, notice what he says. For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all. For what purpose? That I might win more of them. So I'm going to serve other people, not to win their favor, not to try to win their approval, but I'm going to serve other people because I'm looking for an opportunity to lead them to Jesus. Wow, that transforms all of our interactions with others, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Now go on to verse 20. Now he's going to go into several different categories of people. To the Jews, I became as a Jew in order to win Jews. How do you suppose Paul became a Jew? Can you think of any instances where he became a Jew in order that he might have an opportunity to reach out? Nathan.
One time would be when he had Timothy circumcised.
There you go. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Did Timothy have to be circumcised? No. But in order that he might have an open door to the Jews, he had Timothy circumcised so that Timothy would not be an unnecessary offense. Now, was he obligated to do that? Absolutely not. And in another circumstance, he would have said, absolutely, we're not going to circumcise this person because we're free from that. That was the issue in Galatians.
Yeah.
And yet when it comes to circumcising Timothy, yeah, he went in that direction, not because he had to, okay, but he did not allow that to be an encroachment on him. And so here's one category, a religious category. We don't necessarily embrace other religions, but let's not bonk somebody over the head as the first thing when we find out, oh, they're a Muslim. Bam. No, one of the things that we might do is simply ask questions to listen, to say, let me understand what you believe, so that you have an open door to say, oh, that's interesting. Now, let me tell you what I believe. So becoming someone doesn't like them doesn't mean that you embrace what they believe or embrace their practices. So there's one religiously. Here's a second one. In verse 20, the second part, it says, to those under the law, I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. I suspect that what he has in mind here is under the law, for instance, of the law of circumcision. To become like a Jew, what did I do? I submitted to some of their traditions and some of their laws, not in a way that would compromise my faith, but in a way that would not let me be offensive. Then he comes to another one in verse 21. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law. Now, who would be someone outside the law? The Gentiles. Yeah, they did not have the covenants of God. They were not given the Old Testament. And so he says, for those who are outside of the law, he says, though not being, let's see, I lost my place. Not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ. He says, I'm not gonna sin against God in this. I'm still under the law of Christ. I will honor Jesus Christ, but I will go hang out with those. That's exactly what Jesus did. And again, Jesus not being concerned about his reputation, what did people say?
Oh, he was awful.
He's hanging out with the drunkards, right?
Prostitutes.
He's hanging out with the prostitutes. He can't be a godly man, can he? No, Jesus, for the sake of reaching out to those, and Paul, in a sense, is doing the same thing. Now, what we want to be careful of is, are we becoming more like the people we are hanging out, or is it being an open door? And if we are weak in the faith in a particular area, let's not put ourselves in danger, okay? But neither let us keep people at an arm's length away because they are somehow unacceptable. He says, and again at the end of verse 21, he says, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. In our culture, who would be the weak? Who are considered to be weak?
Well, from a cultural point of view, those considered weak would be like those who don't have a lot of money or
Okay, those who don't
standing.
Those who don't have much money, those who don't have much social standing, the elderly, okay, yeah. Which one?
The unborn or the
Sure.
physically handicapped or somehow handicapped.
Yeah, physically handicapped. Yeah, these are the kind of people that, at least by cultural norms, are kind of the people on the fringes. Folks that we don't really care to hang around with. We want to be with the in crowd, those who have something to contribute. He says, but for the weak, what did I do? So what did he do? Probably for the cripple, what did he do? He probably got down where they were at in order that he might sit with them. He might have sat with a beggar. Okay? So you see what he's doing. Then he says, at the end of verse 22, he says, I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessing. And then they give us one other passage, and that's in chapter 10, verse 31. 10, verse 31. this very familiar passage. It says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. So notice, religiously, the Jews, the Greeks who are outside of the law, but also to those who are within the church. Okay, those who are already believers. So there's a careful balance here. On the one hand, Paul began by saying, I'm not under obligation to anybody, and yet for the sake of the gospel, what do I do? I'm not going to be an offense to the Jews in order that I might bring the gospel to the Jews. I'm not going to, I want to become like, or at least serve those who are outside the gospel, but I also want to do so in a way that I don't unnecessarily offend those who are already believers. So there's a careful balance, isn't there?
Pastor, I have a question.
Sure thing.
So what's the difference when Peter, he was hypocritical and didn't eat with the Gentiles in front of the Jews, but then what's the difference? And then Paul has Timothy circumcised. So what's the difference?
I think in Peter's case, he was afraid of what the Jews would say about him.
Okay.
And so when the Jews were around, he would eat with the Gentiles.
Okay.
But he was doing it more to save face. Perhaps there's an instance where you'd say, okay, I don't want to unnecessarily offend them. And so I think it has to be a situation by situation. In this case, I would do this, but in a different setting, I would do it differently because of people who might be around, how they might interpret this. So it's a bit of wisdom. Yeah. I don't know. Anybody have any other insights on that one?
Well, I just know that in Acts chapter 10, after Paul was converted
And then when I thought of it, as soon as I did,
it seems like God had to have a little discussion with Peter and tell him, the vision in Acts 10 where
Right.
all these fruits came down. He said, no, Lord, I have never eaten of anything that is unclean. And God had to tell him, don't call unclean what I have
Right.
cleansed. In other words, kind of pointing out to Peter, we're sort of maybe transitioning here a little bit, that Gentiles no longer have to become a Jewish proselyte first
Yeah.
to be saved. We're going to go directly to the Gentiles. And
Yeah,
that
it was a tough thing to get
because it was new.
the idea of opening our hearts and our minds to Gentiles.
Yeah, and that they could be saved just on the same as we,
Yeah.
without having to first become a Jewish proselyte.
Yeah. I don't know, does that help, Donna?
Yeah.
Not
I mean, I
exactly.
should know because we studied Galatians last year, a couple of years ago in the Bible study. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll have to dig
Yeah,
into the Timothy thing.
Peter was more concerned with his own reputation,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
as
Yeah.
opposed to-
Yeah, if we would go back and take a look at the context, I think that's what makes it clear.
Okay.
Yeah, Peter was concerned about his reputation and how he would be perceived.
Okay, thanks.
There's more to the story too, I think. Part
Sure.
of the story is justification by faith as seen from
Right.
Paul's perspective. I was thinking too about how, one reason why we're kind of hesitant to witness to people who are just really lost and really depraved is because we don't really appreciate the wonder that God justifies the ungodly for faith alone.
Yeah.
That's why it's amazing how, we tend to think, well, our nice neighbors who are, just very law-abiding people, upright, nice people, that somehow they're more gospel material. But the reality is that, justification is solely, through faith alone. So it's remarkable. But in the case in hand, the problem is that those Jews who are influenced by the Pharisees are implying that justification is not only by faith in Jesus Christ, but by still partly obeying, dietary laws. And that's why, Paul has to tell Peter that you're actually, you're undermining the gospel.
Yeah. All right, let me go on just a little bit further here. Verse 32 says, give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Notice, don't be a people pleaser for the sake of their approval, but try not to offend them for the sake of the gospel. That's a fine balance. Okay? I think our natural default mode is I want to be acceptable to people, and so I won't say anything about Jesus because I don't want to offend them. Paul says, I've tried to befriend all kinds of people, not for their approval or acceptance, but that I might have an open door for the gospel. And that's what we ought to look for. And you know what? I've found that oftentimes gives me a confidence and a boldness because I don't have to worry about what people are going to say about me. But rather, I'm simply looking for an open opportunity to share the gospel with them. If they reject me as a person, fine, because I don't know them anything, and they don't know me anything. But if I can connect with them for the sake of the gospel. And so what does he say? 11 verse 1, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. If you go in your booklets to the next page, we've already talked about some of these questions. We talked about number 1 already, as well as number 2. If Paul is free, why does he make himself a servant of all? What is the goal or the purpose? What's motivating his actions? Notice repeatedly he says, that I might win the weak, that I might win the Jew, that I might win those under the law, that I might win those outside of the law, that I might win, right? Win them to Christ.
Your choice.
Now, again, if we remember our last lesson, or probably 2 lessons ago, it's not we who win them, but it's encouraging and humbling to know that God uses people like us. Okay? And then number 3, what did this mean in practice for Paul, and what might it mean for you? And I think we've discussed that as well. But let me just hear from anybody else who would like to contribute. What are some ways, or can you give me an example from your own life? How have you, in a sense, become like or have tried to open the door to those by showing an interest in them? Anybody want to share from their own life experience, or maybe a relationship that you're in right now with a neighbor or a coworker, or what are you trying to do to be to them or to meet them where they are, so to speak?
Well, we have a really, really good friend who is a Roman Catholic, and Karen's husband died back in 2009, and it was devastating. It was a wonderful marriage. So she used to come out and stay with us in Henderson a couple of weeks every winter. And it was really, I mean, we always had devotions at our table and stuff. And then Karen and I used to have conversations a lot about, and she would mention like her husband being dead and this and that. I would say things like, well, isn't it wonderful? I believe that Dan, he seemed to love the Lord and know the Lord, and isn't that wonderful? And then just a few weeks ago, she has been diagnosed now with a cancer. And I mentioned something about on that order again about, I think she brought Dan, I can't remember. But anyway, the thing about our security of, knowing that our place and where we're going. And she says, well, we don't believe in that. We believe in purgatory. And I just almost dropped dead. It's like all the discussions we had and it's like, oh man, and now that makes me worry. Does she really know the Lord?
Right.
I hope so. And we'll keep, now she's in Indianapolis.
Okay.
There's a video coming up.
Crises, opportunities, oftentimes open conversations, don't they? Good. All right, I'm going to show you this next video. It's about freedom to serve. Explains a little bit some of the things that we've been talking about. At the tail end, it's only about, I think, 5 or 6 minutes long. At the very tail end, there are 3 testimonies, people who are interviewed. Listen carefully to things that impacted them as God was using people in their lives to open the door to the gospel.
Don't you want to play the real one?
Yeah, one, two.
Oh, okay.
Paul says in Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, that for freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. This is a good summary of Galatians so far. The Christians had been hijacked by the reintroduction of rules and obligations. So all that Paul had taught them about the freedom Christ brings was being lost. And he writes a rocket of a letter to get them back to the path of freedom and joy. But the last third of the letter is about another bondage that we can fall into. It's thinking that freedom is for me to lose every obligation and indulge myself. Paul has to guard Christians from such a danger too. Not every apparent freedom is freedom. The goldfish that makes a bid for freedom by jumping out of its bowl has made a tragic mistake. Dry land is not freedom. So Christian freedom escapes the dry land of rules, but it also escapes the dry land of indulgence. We need to be in the bowl of God's will to find our real freedom. Human freedom is found in Christ and in his service. That is the paradox of life. His service is perfect freedom. So Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 is the midpoint between one slavery to religious rules and one slavery to self-indulgence. It is the second that we must consider now. Surely the danger for many Bible-believing Christians is to say, well, I'm saved, and no one has to go around pestering people. If they ask me, I'll tell them. But my faith is real, and I'm safe, so that's all that really matters. But our freedom is not freedom to keep what Jesus has given us. Our freedom is to give away what Jesus has given us.
Blurred to hear.
The Apostle Paul was concerned in Galatians that Christians use their freedom to serve one another in love.
I'd rather
He goes on to speak of being led by the Spirit, restoring the drifter to Christ, and doing good to all people. So we've been set free from rules for people. The same principle is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, where Paul tells the Corinthians they are to use their freedom to help the person with a tender conscience. In other words, don't ask, now that I'm free, what can I do? But rather, now that I'm free, who can I serve? Perhaps you think Christians shouldn't be told this, or it will become a new rule on what to do. But Paul is merely concerned to get Christians out of a mindset that thinks only, I'm free. The wise person goes on to say, now I'm free, how will I use it for others? And if we're going to help people eternally, we'll have to repent of thinking of ourselves with a let them find out for themselves attitude. One of the things that sobers me every now and again is to realise that many of our missionaries are expected to reach out to the place where they work. In fact, we assume a town or city is blessed to have them, and they are. But the place where we live and work has a missionary called you or me, and we are God's representative, the only one many may meet or see. So what can we do to connect more than we do? A short conversation may communicate hugely that we're friendly, more than the one word as we rush by. Then the careful listening to their situation may provide opportunity to ask later how things are, show practical help, assure of prayer, coffee or meal together. The workbook has opportunity for discussion about this friend-forming priority. Try not to come up with ideas that others can do, but with your group, think through things that you will seek to do.
I think that they were just so open to including me in their lives, and because they were Christian, their lives included many Christian things. And I'm sure that after certain events, they thought, maybe she's got it, and it would be quite disappointing then to realise I hadn't.
During that time when my friend was inviting us, she'd actually invite us to dinner at her place with her husband and her family, and we'll certainly experience the environment of Christians during that time. And that certainly made us realise that Christians are different people, and there's the kindness and the love and the care that was demonstrated by a lot of her friends, even though they hardly knew us. They would be very forthcoming in welcoming us into dinners and various social situations.
I also found that quite quickly I was invited by these people I was meeting at church to go along to things that they might have at their own homes or that they were getting up to during the week and during the weekend. which was nice as well. So quite quickly I was, yeah, became part of the social scene of these people.
All right, let's go to page 31, where we have another little exercise here. It says there's a
Supposed to be
chart on
stopped.
page 32. It's got 3 columns.
Huh?
In the first column, you have the name. Then what sort of relationship do you have with the person? And what do they know about Jesus? And then the third column is the practical steps that you can take. So what I want you to do is from page, let's see, 29, just for the sake of the exercise, pick out simply one person, the one person to focus your attention on for right now. You can, in your spare time, go back to others, but pick out just one person, put their name in the column at number 1, and answer the question, what sort of relationship do you have with the person? For example, I have one who's an orthodontist, I have one who's a neighbor, I have one who's a barber, okay, I have a couple others who are neighbors. But it gives you a couple of ideas, okay? At the bottom of page 31, you can say, I know him really well. We've been friends for years. He has been to church a few times, but hasn't shown a great deal of interest. In other words, what's your relationship with them? To what degree do they know about Jesus? Here's another one. I run it at the top of page 32. It says, I run into her from time to time, but don't know her very well. She considers herself to be religious and has a loose affiliation with the church or some other religion. Or the third bullet point is, I only started working with her a couple of months ago. I'm not sure what she knows or thinks about Christianity. I must find out. And then in the last column, think of 1 or 2 practical ways you can get to know and serve each person better.
Yeah.
Here are just three examples. Don't be limited to this, but ask him around. I think that's probably more the British way of saying ask him over.
Yeah.
We would say ask him over for dinner to get to know him better.
Yeah.
Find out more about her family. Ask him what he enjoys doing in his spare time. What I've also found is some neighbors who are very self-sufficient, sometimes I've found I'm the one who needs help, and that's been the open door. I had at one time, one of our neighbors, I tried all different kinds of things to be of help to him, but it was on a Saturday when I had a radiator hose that needed to be replaced, and I knew that he knew something about mechanics, and I went over to the neighbor and said, hey, can you help me with this? And that seemed to be the door that opened the way. It was my need and his opportunity to serve me that opened the door to build a bit of a relationship. So you can finish that with the other folks that you've thought about, but I want to go to page 33. I'm going to skip this next video. Probably the key point that he brings out in that very short video is he tells of this man who oftentimes would ask other people along the way of life, if you died, would you go to heaven or hell? And it was at a later time that he learned that that little question had made quite an impact in the lives of a number of people that he had met. And so, but I'm going to skip that for now because I want to do this exercise at the end of the chapter here. I'm at the bottom of page 33. I want you to break up into groups of 2 or 3. Okay, spend some time praying for some of the people you listed in the first exercise. Pray for opportunities and boldness to talk to these people about Jesus. And then, if you have time, we have about 5 minutes here. If you have time, tell the others in your group about the person or persons who were instrumental in you becoming a Christian and how did they make a difference in your life. Okay, for many of you, that's probably your own parents. And if that seems to be the common ground, try to think of another person who really spurred you on. All right, so groups of 2 or 3, try to meet with somebody not in your family. Okay?
Realize that it was in the mid-60s.
Tony, maybe you can have
Evangelical Baptist Church.
Hey, Justin. Want to meet with Tony here, maybe? This is Tony right here.
And I'm sorry, you are Justin. Well, yeah, I was supposed to pray for somebody who's here and she fell
Hey, Nathan, would you meet with her? I'll do some counseling with you too.
Somebody I was saying, Karen was just diagnosed.
I'm going to break out of your comfort zone.
And then she's from and just a couple of.
Can I break your group up too? I know I am. So maybe you can meet with Derek and Justin if you would meet with Tony. But we only have 5 minutes, so you have to keep your comments short and get to prayer.
Yes, yes. All she doesn't know that she doesn't see relate, but she's now with the kids in India. Yeah. And just a few weeks ago, and she I don't I mean, she grew up in
Even though it might be a little awkward, it's like. It is, yeah.
We have built relationships.
My mom was so. I get the performance. Where did you live?
Oh, really?
Oh, I see. Yeah, so I did all that. Yeah, and I still live in for 30 years and I know the community, unless you're in court, not that it's reasonable involved in the church, but I'm just saying it's really hard because
All right, if you have not started praying yet, you need to start praying for the people that you've talked about.
So Kevin and Lisa for Karen, I guess we're supposed to pray.